Hello and welcome to the Ballin podcast by Niche Sports. Niche Sports are proudly sponsored by Hez Boxing Equipment, a fast-growing brand that gives you 20% of all sales on branded products to a boxing gym of your choice. I'm one of your hosts today, David. I'm joined by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Egg. I'm the co-host.
And we are going to be talking to you about everything BBL related. That could be anything from new signings to games, and just sort of general conversation about what's going on in the BBL world.
Yeah, it's been quite busy the last few weeks. Considering it's supposed to be the off season, it's felt like there's been news every couple hours so far.
I think it's quite exciting because I don't know about you, but as soon as it ended, the playoff finals happened, it was then just almost nothing. You go week in, week out with it, and then it just suddenly drops. So it's nice that they've started to ramp it up, and I think it keeps people engaged and is a lot more exciting. I mean, before we get into it, why don't we talk about sort of why we're here and sort of what we love about the BBL? Why don't you get started, Ek?
Yeah. So I'm from sunny Devon. I was a Raiders fan, RIP. They're back now, though, obviously. And then I've been a Plymouth City Patriots fan for the last 2 seasons since we've been returned to the BBL. It's been a never a dull moment for us. Gone from bottom of the league to just scraping into the playoffs on our first season, and then last season riding high, and then imploded in the only way we probably can down here. So I'm looking forward to just watching basketball again and hoping that the club progresses a little bit more this season.
I think the best part about this league is I think every new season is a fresh start. You almost
Yeah,
try and forget about pre. I mean, for myself, I'm a Surrey boy, so Scorchers season ticket holder and watcher. So I feel your pain, probably worse, because there wasn't much hope last season. But it's a fresh season. I came into the BBL last year. I didn't even know there was a basketball league. I've always loved basketball, so it's really nice to have something that's local, easy to watch, free to watch, where a lot of people get involved and hopefully spread the word and get everything a bit more known and busier, which I think they're really doing that this season, especially with their like media and promotion. I don't know how you feel, but it's a lot more cohesive and
yeah,
sort of I think the BBL themselves are getting involved with it a lot more, which is it gives it that sort of sense of professionalism and sort of taking it a bit more seriously.
from going from 10 years ago when I first started watching the Raiders to now, it's the on off the court stuff and the players and this playing style is completely different. It's come on leaps and bounds, and people are talking about it being ultra competitive. So many teams going into Europe now. 10 years ago, it was you couldn't even imagine that. You couldn't imagine one team being in Europe regularly, let alone four or five,
Well, I
and
think
having former
what's
OBO players.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting about that Europe, I don't know if anyone out there has listened to our first episode with Josh Steele, but I think he wanted something to change in the BBL, which was to have at least 4 teams in Europe, and then lo and behold, his magic wand. Yeah, we've now got 4 teams in Europe, so hopefully he'll wish a few more good things in, and there'll be some positive changes.
Yeah, I don't want to sound bitter, but our rivals, our lovable rivals up in Bristol are in Europe. So I'm happy for three teams to do well in Europe, but I don't want the Flyers to do very well because we'll never hear the end of it. Not that
Well,
I'm not a bitter Patriots fan, but
Well, hopefully on the bright side, they'll be so knackered from Europe that when they come and play some domestic games at home, they might fall short, and then we can wiggle our way up.
well, yeah, I'm not saying anything more about Flyers or anybody else. I'm not trolling anybody else just yet because I did that before Christmas and then it blew up in my face.
Let's build up the confidence there. So, I mean,
Yeah,
let's. I mean, there's been so many announcements, sort of week in week out. Hopefully next week we'll catch up a bit more, but let's maybe start at the top of the league and work our way down.
yeah.
So with all of London's, I think they've got the most at 10. The last time I checked, maybe 11. Who are you most excited to see on that new roster for the new season?
There's so many. They basically brought everyone back apart from Josh Ward Hibbert. Sam Decker is obviously the class act. Whether you want to agree he should have been MVP or not, he's he's the poster boy, isn't he? He's the one that puts bombs on
He's the
seats.
face of
But
the BBL, and
yeah, he
that's
is.
obviously a positive because that's gonna draw people in for sure.
Yeah, but I think Josh Sharma is for me. As soon as I heard he'd re-signed, I don't watch the Lions domestically. It's kind of it can get a bit dull. But in Europe, Josh Sharma he's been class, and that's one of the players I was talking about. He's come in and he's just gone about his business. He's bought into it. It's for him to be in the league and for him to re-sign, regardless if it's the money or not, is showing that the league is moving places. And I think, with all due respect to Josh, he could probably play. He could have got a gig somewhere else in Turkey or Europe, but he chose to come back to the BBL. So I think fair play.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
I think that's down to because I was listening to an interview with Jordan Taylor and Drew Lasker on their YouTube series.
yeah,
I think what a lot of people want to come back to is the culture because it's very similar to, if they're from America or Canada, it's quite a similar culture. So if the money's right, then why not? Because you don't sort of have that language barrier. But I agree with you. Josh Sharma was one of the great signings for them because, as much as London Lions team was unbelievably great on defense and offense, there was no player that could stop Sharma in the
no,
league. No big could come against it. He would just tower over them. But I mean, he's brilliant to see, and hopefully we'll see a bit more. But I would like to see someone sort of go sort of toe to toe with him
yeah,
on the court and make it a bit more interesting, which is what everyone likes to see. But yeah, hopefully in Europe, I agree with you in terms of domination. But for me, the one that I was most happy with and glad he came back was Jordan Taylor. I
yeah,
think he's one of, well, especially now Rabon's retired, is one of the best guards in the league, especially point guards. I mean, he can run the plays, make the shots. He's obviously a clear leader. So I think he's a great player and a good addition for them as well, for sure.
I was talking about this earlier today with someone. Obviously, they've lost. Coach Schmidt's gone to an unnamed NBA franchise, but do that team on its own, how much coaching does it need? They're obviously going to need play calls and they're going to need someone to pull the trigger at certain times, but they're going to have people queuing around the block for that job. There can't be many other teams with a roster that's stacked like that, with with the ambition to go where they want to go. If you're in the G League at the minute, you're looking at that and thinking, yeah, it's one of the best cities in the world to live in. It's got all the resources. I don't think they're going to struggle to find someone to fill his shoes. I'm I'm looking at it and wondering who they're going to bring in, not worried about the standard of the person they bring in, to be honest.
Well, especially if the former coach of that team is now in the NBA, a lot of people are going to look at that as a potential stepping stone. But then they also have the pressure of, the previous coach managed to get triple threat with 3 titles under the belt and first time in the playoffs for an English team. I mean, that is a lot of pressure. I think you're right. As much as the team has lots of talent, skill, how much of that is driven by coaching? Because I think clearly he's a big part of their success last season. So, it was clear at the start of the season that they were possibly going to dominate the league again. But is that going to be the case without Ryan Schmidt? Who knows?
It's like, if they don't deliver in Europe, that's going to be the only reason that you would see them removing someone. They're going to. The discussion isn't about how, if they're going to win the BBLs, by how many they're going to win it by and how many games they're going to lose. It's in Europe, I think, is the biggest question mark for them. And I've seen the draw, and the draw looks quite favourable for them.
Oh yeah,
It doesn't look too difficult. I know they had a few slip ups last year when they played the Israeli team. I can't remember who it was. Was it Tel Aviv? One of the Tel Aviv teams came and turned over a ridiculous deficit. But to be honest, I think that it's only a matter of time before the Lions do make it into EuroLeague. They just need someone to come in and just steer the ship and to just, execute the plays and make sure the guys are focused. I think that's all that they respectively need. And as one sided as the BBL is going to become, if the league's going to move forward, we do need that. But at the same time, it should be frustrating for everybody else to look at that.
it's definitely swings and roundabouts for that. I
Yeah,
mean, you get to watch a lot of great Europe games, but then I think those teams that are going to Europe, like Newcastle, Bristol and the Gladiators are putting together a pretty impressive roster at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, let's move on to a team that perhaps surprisingly isn't in any Europe games, and that'll be Leicester. I mean, they seem to be a bit quieter with signings. I think they've got about 6 or 7. I mean, who out of that list are you quite excited to see back on the courts?
I'll hands up. Kimball Mackenzie is outside of the Patriots is my favorite player in the league. He's just a class act. He just goes about his business. You can see him go through the gears. If Leicester need someone to come out and take the game by the scruff of the neck, he's able to do it. And for the fact he's still relatively young as well. As soon as I re-signed him, I know there's a bit of humour around it, but I'm looking at that roster again now, and there's a lot of players I don't know, but you have to trust the experience of their coach, the fact that he's able to deliver year after year after year. But yeah, Kimball Mackenzie. I think losing Patrick Whelan is going to be a big loss for them. And I think Nelson Henry obviously retiring as well. But you never know with them, do you really? They're always going to be there. I've seen some people mark them down as finishing as low as 6th, and I would be gobsmacked if they finished that low. I'm expecting them to finish top 3 again.
You know what? If before I saw those team changes, I probably would agree with you. But you forget they've lost Adekoya as well, who was a big part of their play that could pick up that big spot to give that sort of pressure on the floor. I agree with you in terms of choice. Kimball Mackenzie is one of the best guards in the league. For me, I think he performs better when he comes off the bench rather than as a starter. I don't know why that has an effect, but for him it works. So it's a question of, again, what they struggled with last year is who can they get in on that point guard position? Because they sort of went through different stages. They had Carrington Love towards the end of the season that was really good. Is it a question of are they going to bring him back? We don't know. But then they've got to fill those positions of they're big. Obviously, they've got Mo Walker coming back, which is nice to see. Obviously, he suffered that injury. But will Aaron Menzies sort of cover that second position as well? Because he was quite dominant, but not as dominant as Josh Sharma. So it's going to be interesting to see where that team goes and sort of how they push forward. But because the only team they couldn't manage to beat last year was London Lions. Every game they played, it was, and I think that's where the pressure is this season. They're going to be looking at building a roster to take down the guys of the crown.
I think the emergence of the Lions has been somewhat of a culture shock, felt more in Leicester than it has Newcastle. I think that for Leicester, they were used to being one of the top 2, and I think that the mindset now is they're going to have to realise that they're now having to compete with the Eagles and obviously the Gladiators for second spot and the Flyers as well. So I think the culture shock is felt more there, but also you talk about culture as that the Lions are implementing. The Riders are the brand as far as I'm concerned within the league. They're like Manchester United, aren't they? They're always there. They're about, you know what you're going to get. They've brought a guy in from the University of Georgia, which is SEC basketball. I don't even know who he is, but obviously they'd have done their homework. They don't just sign any players, do they? So I think they're going to have enough. I don't think they're going to win any silverware again, but I don't think anybody outside of London is going to win any silverware. But
who knows?
I'm excited to watch that Raiders team as well. To be honest, with the Riders team. To be honest with you.
To be fair, I'm quite excited to watch all of everyone's building up some, different rosters. But let's move on to Bristol. Third place guys next season. I mean, last season, sorry. Who are you excited to see in that roster with the current announcements?
I would like to Jelani Watson-Gale. I know he's gone. Sorry, just to rub that in. I don't really know a lot about any of the players they've signed, to be honest with you.
So they've signed.
I know Corey Samuels, when he came to Pavilions, was a bit of a nightmare and put on a show. But this is very much a team that I'm not aware of. The big players, Watson-Gale's gone. Del Pesh is obviously gone, and so is VJ King. But
a lot of their heavy hitters, definitely, but they've still got Tevin Ollison that proved to be a great investment last season for them. They've also lost Thomas Bell III. Leslie Smith their other centre, so obviously need to fill that hole for Delpesh. Like I said, Corey Samuels. I think that was it for the re-signs from memory.
I
I feel like there's
think it
one
is.
more.
They've signed players from a bit of a mix and mash of players. They've signed a few, obviously re-signed a few. And then they've got a guy from Johnson, Kendrian Johnson from West, from TK Hanover,
Mm.
who was coach as well, apparently, according to the BBL Daily. And then they've signed someone who I can't even say that. I'm assuming somewhere in Europe, Jacob. So it's a bit of a mix and match of cultures they brought in, but
Well, I wasn't unfortunately a watcher of the BBL sort of during the 21-22 season, but it looks like they brought back at least one, possibly two of those players
yeah.
from which has given quite a lot of buzz on Twitter, so it'd be exciting to see.
I know that there's talk they're moving to a new arena and they've slowly built the support up. A lot of I think the last 9 or 10 games of the season were all sellouts at their arena. So it's building and they've got all of the framework in place to be a West Country version of the Gladiators. It's just going to take time for them to put that puzzle together. But they've also got the upside that they've got an international airport literally slap bang right next to where they are. So it's, as much as it pains me to say, I think that they're going to go through the gears in the next few years, and they'll probably be there challenging or there or thereabouts for silverware. And again, the coach he's been there from day one, hasn't he? Really, so it's his club. He's got the stamp on it. So it's, as long as we can maybe grind a win out against them, but I don't see. I think they're going to be there or thereabouts again. I know there's a few question marks if they're going to be legit again like last season, but it's going to be. I think that second and third spot's going to be the most fascinating storyline this season, isn't it? With all the teams and the stacked rosters out there.
It's just so, it was clear at the end of the season who to predict, but with all these announcements, it's so hard. I mean, let's move on to exciting team last year, I think, were the trophy final winners, the Gladiators. Who are you excited to see on that roster again?
I am Johnny Bunyan. I think, although he is obviously coming towards the twilight years of his career, he is class and he knows how to grind a win out and he knows what he's doing. So I'm excited to see him back. And Fraser Malcolm as well, actually, is also another player that really made them click last season. So it's a brave new world for the Gladiators, and there's a lot of hype around them as a club. But they're the ones I'm most fascinated to see in Europe and what they're going to achieve, because there's a lot of pressure on them, I think, coming into this season, because all the talk of the money, the podcasts their owners have done, it's either going to be a fairy tale, it's going to be an absolute disaster. So it's going to be a fascinating watch. But I'm glad that I'm not a Gladiators fan, but it's a very good roster from what they brought in so far, and they haven't really lost anyone from what I can see. All the players that haven't re-signed are all TBC, so they could theoretically still have the squad from.
Well, they have lost one that I'm aware of. They've lost Al Durham, so he's gone to the same team as VJ King. The guys in the Eurocup, so that he's confirmed. Jeremiah Bailey has confirmed that he's not coming back. And I think rumours, I don't think it's confirmed that Tape won't be coming back. But again, that hasn't been confirmed. But I know Bailey and Darren have. I mean, yeah, they were really exciting last season. I think for me, who I'd love to come back, but highly doubt it because of the season he had, was Sloan. I thought he was so explosive as a guard, bang on the money for the shots, running the plays. I thought he was great. But in terms of who's actually signed, I mean, it's quite hard for me. I'd say two of my favourite is Prince Onwas. I think he's clearly one of the clear leaders on the court. Great on defense, great on offense, sort of an all-round player. And I think someone who sort of kept them alive towards the end of the season was Pharaoh Alhobtic, if I've said his name incorrectly or correctly. Obviously, they had Tape and Ali Fraser go on injury, so he was pretty much playing all games, most games, and he was just putting in the work and improving game by game. So the fact he's got that extension till 2025 is going to be really exciting to see him and how he develops. So it's definitely good to see.
and the building blocks are there because a lot of guys they're signing are on 2-year deals, so they're taking things even further because Lions aren't signing people to 2-year deals. So it's for them. I think it's going to be a case of like I've just said, the Flyers. It's going to be a case of how far can they go, but they're doing it in a sustainable way. I think that they're without having the money like 777 have got. I think that that's the benchmark for teams such as our Patriots and yourselves. I think to build towards. And I think that's the blueprint that you'll see a lot of other clubs following throughout the time. So it's I don't think they'll win anything. I'm still of the mindset that I think London will do a clean sweep this season, but you don't begrudge them a bit of success because they're doing it the right way. They're not trying to buy success out. They're going about it the proper, sustainable way. They're trying to build the squad. I know there's obviously a little bit of unhappiness within certain sections of Glasgow because they're not the Rocks anymore, but sometimes you gotta rebrand and you gotta be fresh and you gotta move forward. So I wish I was in Glasgow, to be honest, watching them week in, week out sometimes. But
well, I think I agree. They're definitely a team to watch this season. The next team sort of to look at is, for me, one of the most exciting and sort of had the most adversity in terms of injury and player count. And for me, that was Cheshire. I mean, for me, who I'm most excited about seeing back on that court, they've had a few re-signings, but then obviously they lost Larry Austin, which was just devastating blow for them. Will Neighbour, of course. And I think it's rumoured that Marcus Evans isn't coming back, but I don't know how legit that is. But in terms of players most improved I can see on there from last season, I think it's Ulf. You know, he was injured early part of last season, didn't really play, started to play a little bit, didn't have much of an impact. And then when he had to go on there, he sort of had to make the difference and sort of put in the work. So yeah, that's who I'm most excited to see. Who are you most excited to see?
I was going to say the same, Rolf. I know when they came to Pavilions towards the end of the season, they had basically the bare minimum, and the guys on the bench were walking wounded, and they were a class act. I think they're going to fall from where they were last season. We're going to have the guy from Knicks Nation on the pod from week in, week out coming on. So he'll be able to give more in depth, but I don't think they're going to reach the highs of last season. They're a very small club. I know when they come to Pavilions, they didn't have really any support staff. It was just the two coaches. I wish them well, but I'm not looking really at that roster, and it's not setting me like the guys they've lost. I think are big shoes to fill. Jamal Anderson was their guy, wasn't he? Larry Austin Jr. was and is a class act, and if I was a Cheshire fan, I wouldn't be worried about not making the playoffs. But I think they're probably going to be a bump to earth. I think it's going to be a leveling out for them a little bit this season.
I would say that was as sort of almost as crushing as when Leicester lost Gino as a point guard. It's massive. But I mean, moving on to a big loss in point guards is Manchester, obviously losing Ramon Fletcher, an absolute veteran of the league. But you know, Manchester have been quite quiet. We've only had one announcement, which is Jamal Anderson, but there's rumours and buzzes flying around for Dirk Williams, William Lee, Legend Robertin, maybe even Nick, I can't remember his last name off the top of my head, but yeah, so big guys. Last season they were great to watch, but obviously one of the biggest losses for them was Taj over to Newcastle.
Yeah, and they're one of the staples of the league and of British basketball culture, aren't they? And it's sad to see a club essentially going through what it's happening there. I really hope that they do get back on their feet. But they've brought, on the flip side, they've lost Taj Green, but they brought in Jamal Anderson. So it's you don't know. There's a lot of question marks around them, and there is going to be a Manchester Giants next season, which is great for everybody in the sport. We don't want to lose any more clubs, but you wonder what is the club going to look like going forward as a whole. I think that from talking to Giants fans, their on the court time is probably the least of their concerns. They're wondering. They know they're going to have a team this season, but if this time in 12 months? Is there still going to be a Manchester Giants?
Well, they
What's
also have
happening?
got no coaching
Yeah,
else either, so it's sort of that worry. But let's sort of move on and talk about the Sheffield Sharks. You know, they had a lot of ups and downs in the league last season. You know, sort of a string of wins, string of losses. So it was really hard for them to find the consistency. But I think towards the end of the season, they found the right team and they've done a lot of good re-signs. I mean, for me, it was Bennett Cook. I think he's the best
yeah.
centre overall in the league. I think he can go down with anyone. I think Sharma, he can give him a run for his money. But I mean, today's announcement for me, I really want to see this guy back. I thought he was sort of fresh and great to see, which is Jalen Pipkins. It's
Yeah.
just so fun to watch, so explosive. I mean, for you, who sort of stood out for you in the current announcements?
They were kind of the flip side to us. They were awful up till Christmas, and then after Christmas, they set the world alight. Jordan Routinho, I really like watching him. I think he's a very underrated player.
He's the
You always
unsung
hear his
hero
name,
for
but
sure.
yeah, he's not. He doesn't do anything flashy, but you hear his name and he makes them tick. But there's not a lot going on there, and I'm wondering. Last season they made it into the playoffs, but there's still talk of are they going to be down at the bottom with us? It's they've signed well, but everyone else above them has signed even better. So it's you never know with the Sharks. They're either going to be great or they're going to be quite a dull watch. And I don't mean that in an offensive way, but they're not. They're not the first team when I see them on the fixture list going, oh, well, I've got to watch a Sharks game. But you never know. They could be great. They could be. They are the surprise package, aren't they? I think so far because you don't know
Always
what's going to
expect the
happen.
unexpected with them. I think
Yeah,
the only downside they've got before the even leagues even started is their captain, point guard, Glasgow Jr. is out on an injury for the unforeseeable future. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, let's go on to probably the most talked about team so far in terms of announcements. It's obviously Newcastle Eagles. You know, we were talking about that the team have that chip on their shoulder. You know, they've got the most silverware in league history, but not doing the performances the last few years. So I think Mark's really gone out and sort of taken, like you sort of said, building a dream team of
yeah.
players, taking all your little bits out from the league, which is sad for those fans of the leagues, but really exciting to see. Um, I'll be honest with you. For me, I don't have a favourite. I think overall, I think he's picked such great players that just to see them together, it's hard to imagine. But I think they could. I think they could be onto something really good. But it'd be interesting to see who they bring on top of that. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I think after the last two seasons, by their standards, have been completely underwhelming for them. So it's kind of a case of Mike who had to do something, and I think with the money coming in and with the sponsorship, that he's been given free reign to do what he wants within reason. And I think it's like a PlayStation game, isn't it? It's like you just press X, and it's just filled the roster up for you with the players. It's either going to be a great watch or it's going to be absolutely hilarious because it's all going to fall apart.
I
It's
think time will tell.
yeah. Either these guys are going to gel and they're going to be arguably like one of the best teams built up of NBA of BBL talent, or it's going to just completely implode and it's going to be a great watch for the other fans. But they've got Taj Green, who's a walking highlight reel, isn't he? He's worth a season ticket at their arena alone. You you never know what he's going to do. The guy is just he's class. He should have been MVP last season, and I think he'd be there or thereabouts again.
I agree. I mean, I think there are two teams to watch, and we've got two final teams to talk about. Unfortunately, on the Zoom we set up, time's running out. So why don't we pick a little player each between us from our own teams about
Yeah.
who we're most excited to see, and then we can wrap up today's episode.
I'm going to pick a curveball. There's a young guy on our roster called Will White. He's at the University of Marjons. Played a few minutes against the Lions towards the end of the season, and he is quality. He's one for the future. He embraces what the Patriots are about. He's a young guy. He's been given an opportunity. I assume he's coming back. He's back at the university, so I think that he's a guy that's going to be hopefully getting meaningful minutes. He's definitely one for the future, but it's an outside pick. Everyone's talking about LVC and everyone else we've got him, but Will White's definitely the guy I'm looking forward to seeing on the court again.
Well, hopefully he'll get that time
Yeah.
and sort of make payments for improvements. I mean, for me, as much as there's not many announcements for our Scorchers similar to you, is probably Josh Steele. I think it's such a shame he got injured early in the season last, and once he got healthy and playing again, I think he was sort of putting the buckets away and making constant improvements. So if we can get him healthy for a season, I think we'll get a good spell out of him and hopefully get a few more wins than last season on there. I think that's the goal. But yeah, that's it for us today. Hopefully we'll be back next week talking about some more announcements, some news in the BBL, and hopefully soon we'll get a bit of fixtures. So thanks for listening, guys.
Have a good one. See you again.
Bye.